I am 32 male. I work at a busy consultant office in the Bronx of New York. Our clients include some investment companies in Wall Street. Her name is Jennifer. She's a 24-year-old and works part-time as an office assistant that cleans the office and performs some small tasks like run errands, restock the coffee and other perishable items, and ensure that the majority of the male workers are comfortable. She's basically the maid of the office. She's very industrious and owns her own street vending carts, and she's hoping to save enough money to start selling food items on the vending carts in the evening. She has been working there for a year before I even spoke to her. I just got out of a relationship at the time, and I was wondering why a beautiful girl like her was doing such a work. She told me that she was from the Buffalo area and had a rough upbringing. She had an abusive stepfather and an addict of a mother, and she came to the Bronx to make a living because there is no opportunity for her up there other than stripping and selling herself. I fell in love with her story before I fell in love with her. When I met her, she was aimless. She didn't have anything going on in her life. The guys around our office would send her and pay her, and sometimes they would send her to the store to shop their food stuff for them. She was very diligent, and she was beautiful too. One day I called her on the side and had a conversation with her. "Don't you have an education?" I asked. She answered, "I went to high school, but I couldn't complete. I dropped out before I could complete." I asked, "You live with your parents?" She answered, "My parents are in Buffalo. I'm here in the Bronx with a friend. She also does the same job at another company." I took her number and we started talking on the phone. I told her, "The job you're doing doesn't befit your beauty. Think about something you can do and we'll support you." A week later, she told me, "If you can invest in me to buy a better food cart so I could be selling food and other stuff in the evening in front of the house I live. There is space there. It's a busy road. I have spoken to the landlord and she has agreed for me to do it there." One day after work, I went with her to inspect the place. I spoke to the landlord and she said indeed she have given her the go-ahead to do it there. I worked out the number and gave her $8,000 to start with. All this while we had only kissed and did nothing else. I wanted her to be my girlfriend, but first, I wanted to take her away from our office before I would make a move on her. She started doing the business, and she was doing well at it. I visited her stand after work every evening to see how she was doing. Not too long after she started, I realized guys had already started pitching camp close to her. Every day when I went there was someone new sitting next to her. To avoid any future complication, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she answered me, "What took you so long?" I answered, "I wanted you to be on your feet first." She said yes, so we started dating. I started talking to her about guys who comes around her stand. Those guys can steal from you. Don't give them space around you. You're working, so you have to focus on the job. She called it jealousy and paid little attention to me. I would be lonely without them. Rest assured, I can't fall for anyone. Why would I betray you this way? I was with her one day when a guy walked to the stand. He called her to the side, and I saw them exchange something between them. When she came back, I asked her, "What was that?" She answered, "Someone left something for him, and he came for it." Not too long afterwards, another guy came around, and the same thing happened. I started getting curious. Someone left something for him too? She nodded. The last man was a Rasta man. He didn't care about my presence. He asked, "You have the flower?" She winked at him, and I saw it. The Rasta man kept asking her until she screamed, "I told you I don't have some." The Rasta man walked away, but it was becoming clear to me what she has been exchanging with those guys. I went through her bag and found a little container in there. I opened it, and it was weed. She was selling to those guys. I was shocked. "Jennifer, since when? Who gave you this to sell? Do you want to go to jail? What has come over you?" She said one of the guys introduced her to it. He brings it to her to sell, and they split the proceed. I told her to stop, but she didn't mind me. She started making losses. I told her to pay extra attention, but each day when we did balance, she was losing money. I asked her, "Do you want to stop the work? You need money to rent for yourself, and that would come from this business you're doing. Open your eyes before we lose everything. Some days we'll lose something, and some days we'll make some profit." At least the losses weren't rampant, so I took it like that. Then I realized she was into sports betting. All of a sudden, she became interested in the games. She wanted to know the scores, and she would check them on her phone. "Jennifer, what's going on?" She said, "Nothing. Can't a girl love sports too?" Then I saw her betting tickets one day. It was longer than the subway tracks. She was using the money to stake a bet. I threatened to take the business away from her if she continues. I did all I could, but this girl wouldn't stop. One day, I went to her stand, and she wasn't there. Nothing showed that she came to work that day. I called her phone, and it was off. I asked the landlord, and she said she hasn't seen her all day. 3 days later, I still didn't hear from her. I started getting scared. Has she been kidnapped? Is she in trouble? I looked at her friend and asked her whereabouts, and she said, "Ever since she won the bet, I have never set an eye on her. She told me she would go to her hometown, so maybe she's gone." "How much did she win?" She answered. "She didn't tell me, but she gave me $2,000, so it can be a lot." I gave her my number and asked her to call me whenever she hears from her. A week later, I called her, and it went through. She said, "I have come to Buffalo. Thank you for everything, but I'm not coming back again." I asked her, "So you have gone with my money too?" She answered, "We were making losses, so I had nothing left when I was leaving." I asked her about the bet, and she nearly insulted me. She screamed on the phone, "What has that got to do with you? How much I won isn't your concern. Just leave me alone." This girl cut the phone on me that day and stopped picking up my calls. I saw what she was doing on her status. She opened a new shop and was posting the things in her shop on her status. She posted her mom and her brothers. I was there watching in pain. At some point, I deleted her number and moved on. Her posts were hurting me, especially as she wouldn't talk to me. I moved on with my life. In business, we make losses. I took it as I had invested money and lost. 2 weeks ago, I woke up and saw about 5 missed calls on my phone. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't guess who it was. I called back and it was Jennifer. She was crying on the phone, begging me to forgive her. I said, "It's been over a year since you left. Why are you asking for my forgiveness for something you did over a year ago?" She answered, "I lost everything. My brothers connived and stole everything from me. My shop is now empty. Everyone is laughing at me, and I'm back in the Bronx. Even if you don't love me again, can we start the business again? I swear I will work hard and pay you back." She's 25 years old. I gave her the opportunity to escape from abject poverty, but she took my money and bit the finger that fed her. I wasn't going to be twice a fool for her, so I cut the line and blocked her. I was surprised that they hired her back in the office. They send her and give her money. They insult her when she buys the wrong thing. I meet her every day, and she can't even look at me in the face. I'm not angry with her. I have forgiven her even before she asks for forgiveness. Nobody knows our story in the office, so we pretend it never happened. I don't know her, and she also doesn't know me. It's a natural instinct for a man to care for vulnerable women, especially when she's attractive. This behavior is normally called white knight. It's a fairly common condition, generally affecting males, that leads them to rush to the aid of female that appears to be in distress and become attractive to said female in distress. It follows the code of chivalry, and the guy generally acts like a nice guy. The woman the original poster encountered is a hardcore hustler. Her beauty lured him to a false sense of trust and compassion, enough for her to ruthlessly exploit his protective and provider instinct. As men, we need to do better. Don't just look at her beauty. We have to be more robust when we're picking a mate. Even first impression can be deceiving. Try to understand their background and where she came from, how their background affect their behavior. Women are good at hiding it, but the more you get to know her, the more they tell on themselves. Don't be Captain Save-A-Ho. She grew up in a rough environment, and her relationship with men has always been a zero-sum game. She probably had an abusive stepfather, and her brothers stole her stuff, so that might impact how she looked at men. So her view of men might be negative. So she saw the original poster as another chump, and she took advantage of him and discarded him till she needed him again. Luckily, this time the original poster was alive to her shenanigans and kicked her to the curb. As men, we are wired to protect and provide for women, but we have to learn how to teach ourselves to selectively suppress that instinct so you could protect yourself and vet women properly before you give them your resources. So you have to be cognizant of that instinct to be a white knight so you won't be taken advantage of. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.